Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekend reading report. It's time for my weekend reading report, that thrill-packed program where I talk about all the stuff that I read the previous week. And though it was very busy last week, as it has been all month long, I did read some stuff. So let's talk about it. I'll break out my list for the 500 book challenge. The challenge where I have to read 500 books that I own before I will buy any new ones. And we are up to book 313. So, book 313 was this one, The Spider. Robot Titans of Gotham by Norvell Page has this magnificent Steranko cover, which I think is just glorious. And this is an illustration from the first story in this volume. So this was published by Baen Books back in 2007. And they reprinted two adventures of the Spider and a story called The Octopus, which was from the Octopus magazine, and more on that in a minute. So the Spider is one of my favorite pulp heroes. I love the Spider. And the Spider originally was a knockoff of the Shadow, but he quickly developed his own distinct and unique personality. And Norvell Page wrote the vast bulk of the Spider novels. He did not write them all, but he wrote a lot of them under the house name of Grant Stockbridge, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. And this has a couple Spider adventures. The first one published in here is Satan's Murder Machines, and that is the story that is illustrated on the cover here, which appeared originally in the December 1939 issue. And the next story is the far superior Death Reign of the Vampire King. And that was published in November 1935. No idea why the earlier story was published after the later story, but who knows. Both really, really good Spider adventures. The Vampire King is magnificent, where the Spider goes up against the Batman. He goes up against a villain called Batman. Because this is years before the Batman we all know and love appeared on the scene. This is just some wretched evil villain who controls poisonous vampire bats and kills thousands with his poisonous vampire bats. It's awesome. It's just frankly great. But the Spider's interesting. So we have Richard Wentworth. I'll get his name right this time. Richard Wentworth, who is a rich playboy type who is secretly the Spider, even though, everybody pretty much suspects he's a Spider. How they don't know for sure, since it's perfectly obvious that he is, I don't know. But he is secretly the Spider, who doesn't actually look like this in the stories. He's actually this hunchback. He dresses up in this disguise with a cloak, and he has a hunchback, and he has sharp teeth and long hair, and he's a really creepy looking character. But too creepy for the covers of the magazine. So in the magazine covers, he always looked like that. Just Richard Wentworth with a hat and sometimes a mask. But he's an interesting character because whereas the Shadow is remote, unemotional, you never know what the Shadow is thinking, and it's always clear that the Shadow is on top of things. He knows his business. And even if he has setbacks, the Shadow, he's got it all under control. The Shadow, he's a mess, man. The Shadow, first of all, he's an emotional mess. He might be the only bipolar pulp hero. I don't know, but he's got troubles, and he's very emotional, and that's one of the things that makes him so interesting. And he's also really, really incompetent as a pulp hero, as I've mentioned before about this character. He fails all throughout all the novels. Like every Shadow book, all his plans go wrong. If he plans something, it'll go wrong. Something, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And it always seems like a miracle when by the end of the story, he manages to defeat the villain. And he always manages to by the end of the story. But until that point, he's just screwing up. Every plan falls through. He's just a mess, this guy. Frequently injured. He's always getting shot and stabbed and beat over the head. And how he doesn't have, a million concussions and severe brain damage, I don't know. And his girlfriend Nita, who's awesome, by the way, also she's first of all, she's kidnapped practically every adventure. But she's awesome because when the spider is incapacitated, as he often is, she will actually become the spider on occasion. She'll dress up as the spider and go around killing people. Because the spider is, a homicidal maniac. He's a serial killer who kills criminals. He's Dexter before there was Dexter. And it's just gripping. You have to find out what's going to happen next. What can go wrong next with the spider, master of men? He's the master of men. That's what he's called. And the narrator of the story, Norvell Page, who wrote the bulk of the spider adventures, will always tell you how great the spider is as he's screwing up throughout the stories. It's incredible fun. And this is a dynamite book. Both spider adventures were great. The first one, which involves giant robots as depicted on the cover, was awesome. And the one involving Batman, the Vampire King, and his horde of vampire bats, that was great as well. If you ever see this book, pick it up because those are great stories. But this also has The Octopus, which was a pulp story possibly by Norvell Page. Certainly Baen Books thought that Norvell Page wrote the story. But as a commenter alerted me last week when I showed this book as the book I was going to read next, it's very possible that Norvell Page did not write The Octopus. And so it turns out that there's different theories about this story. It's possible somebody else wrote the story. It's possible somebody else wrote the story and Norvell Page either rewrote it or revised it because it reads exactly like a Norvell Page story. Reading it sounded just like Page to me. So who knows? It's a mystery. I don't know the answer. And I'm not sure that we'll ever have a definitive answer on that. It's a crazy-ass story, though, The Octopus. So the octopus is this evil villain who dresses up, you guessed it, as an octopus. He's got these arms that go around and he can grab people with his arms. And he's an evil villain, and he's turning people into these kind of blood-sucking zombie monsters. So they're kind of like zombie vampires. And he's going up against not the spider, but the Skull Killer. There's a character called the Skull Killer, which is a young guy whose name I'm forgetting, who has two secret identities. One of his secret identities is Dr. Skull. Now, why he doesn't just... So Dr. Skull is just this kindly doctor who goes around helping people with his doctor's skills. Now, why he just isn't a doctor, why he needs a secret identity as a doctor, I don't know. I have no idea. I read the story, I don't know. But the other identity is the Skull Killer. And he's got this little thing that he could press on people's foreheads after he kills them that puts little skulls there, which seems an awful lot like the spider who has his cigarette lighter that puts little spiders on people's heads after he kills them. So he's basically the spider, but with an extra secret identity. And he's not quite as much of a screw-up. Not quite. But the story is insane. With hordes of these infected zombie vampires that are inhabiting this hospital, and it's incredibly gruesome and violent and insane. And that's why they put it in this book, because it's just, you got to read this story. If you read old pulp stuff, you've got to read The Octopus. So if you ever find this book, pick it up. It's pretty great. This book is pretty great if you like old pulpy stuff. And you know what? I kind of like old pulpy stuff. So I read that. That was book 313, which brings me to 314, Michael Moorcock's Warriors of Mars. It's Warriors of Mars. It's another book about an adventurer on Mars. This one is Michael Kane. Yes, it's Michael Kane. So in this story, Edward P. Bradbury, this was originally published under the pseudonym Edward P. Bradbury. And this was written back in the mid-1960s, I think 1965. So it's an old Michael Moorcock story. And it's dedicated to H.G. Wells and Edgar Rice Burroughs, although it's pretty much all Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is basically an Edgar Rice Burroughs pastiche. It's not Edgar Rice Burroughs Mars, but it's close to being Edgar Rice Burroughs Mars with some very significant differences, but it's basically an Edgar Rice Burroughs interplanetary adventure. But instead of John Carter, we get Michael Kane. So Edward P. Bradbury, the guy who's, chronicling Michael Kane's adventures on Mars, Edward P. Bradbury is in Paris, and he meets the actor Michael Caine, and Michael Caine tells him his story, and Edward P. Bradbury is really, really gullible. He will believe anything. So when he runs into Michael Caine tells him that he's a physicist who invented a teleportation machine and that he's been to Mars. And he tells him this whole crazy story about how he was on Mars and all the adventures he had on Mars. And Edward P. Bradbury believes every little bit of it. He's like, yes, I believe that crazy ass story. And it's pretty crazy. It's very fun. This was a very fun book. So physicist Michael Caine has come up with a teleportation device along with the help of some other scientists. You get into a box and there's another box over there in the other room, and this is supposed to teleport you from the box you're in to the other box. You know how teleportation devices are supposed to work. Only Michael Caine isn't a very great scientist. So somehow he ends up on Mars instead of in the other box, even though there's not another box on Mars. And not only does he end up on Mars, he ends up on Mars thousands and thousands of years ago. So he travels through time as well as through space. How? Who knows? We never know. But he's there, and he ends up meeting these Martians, and he goes to their city, and he has to fight a horde of gigantic blue warrior giants, and he falls in love with a princess, and she gets captured by the horde of giant blue giants during a siege, and there's a big siege of the city, and there's an evil femme fatale, and he has to go into these caverns where there's this underground city and fight the blue giants and get the princess. And yeah, it's an Edgar Rice Burroughs story, only written by Michael Moorcock, who wasn't the writer that he became later, because this is probably the most poorly written book that I've ever read by Moorcock. It's not a well-written book. It reads like it was written by a teenager very frequently. Which is not to say it's not good. I enjoyed it. It was a very entertaining adventure. Didn't take long at all to read. There are 3 of these. He wrote his own Martian trilogy. I knew going into it that this is not particularly well thought of. This is certainly considered one of his lesser works. It's nowhere near the level of Elric or anything else that he wrote. But it's fun. I mean, if you know going into it that it's not going to be a great book. Rhonda's over there scratching herself. If you know going into this that this is not going to be a great book, but it's probably going to be a fun book, you will enjoy yourself, because I did. I thought it was highly entertaining. So Warriors of Mars, not a great book, but a good book, and it stars Michael Caine. Yeah, he makes everything better. So there was that. I read that. That was book 314. Now, book 315 was Solomon Kane, The Serpent Ring, which is a graphic novel. It collects this 4-issue miniseries, Solomon Kane. This was kindly sent to me by a very good friend. And there's Solomon Kane on the back. This is written and illustrated by Patrick Zircher, who is a fantastic artist, as you can see right there. He's very, very good at drawing. And so he's a very, very good artist. And this is an excellent story. It takes place earlier, I think, in Solomon Kane's career, so he doesn't have his little, cat-headed staff yet. But he does go to Africa, so it's, I think, probably his first adventure in Africa, chronologically, if you put it in with the other Solomon Kane stories. This is good. This is a good graphic novel or miniseries. I enjoyed it. I thought the story was excellent, where the evil ring of Thoth Amon from back in the Hyborian Age shows up, as does the Serpent People, which was just great. This is a great character, the Hot Witch Doctor here in the story, but there's a very big but as far as this, and I cannot recommend this. I refuse to recommend this, and for a reason that annoys me. I'm not sure it would annoy everybody else, but there's something that Zircher does that just... So, Zircher, I'm not sure which one it is. Like most, if not all, comic book artists now, he does not work with pen and paper. He works on a screen. And like I said, I think every comic book artist does that. But that gives him the ability to take shortcuts in his art, which he takes full advantage of. Let me give you an example that I found particularly annoying. So I will show you the Naughty Knight of Malta. That's this guy. Great picture. Great picture of the Naughty Knight of Malta as he confronts Solomon Kane and his friends. He's there with his sneer and his gun, confronting them. But if you look at the page, Zircher liked this picture so much that he used it over and over again. There it is again. Same picture. Same picture there. Only he moved the arm a little over, which is easy as hell to do when you're working digitally, right? So he moved the arm over so it would still be so you could still see the gun in the panel. But this picture is this picture, and it's also this picture, just as this picture is this picture. And if you go to this page, that's a pretty good picture, so he uses it again here and here. Just as this picture of Solomon Kane's face is that picture. So he's cutting and pasting all over the place. He might change some things, like he changed the positions of the characters, and he changed the Solomon Kane's eye, so it's going in a different direction than it is here. But that's the same picture. There's a lot of cutting and pasting of characters. And this is something that Zircher does over and over and over again in this story. In fact, he liked this picture so much that later on, when we have all of our characters in a boat, there's that same picture. I mean, why redraw all the main characters in the boat when you can just cut and paste them from other places? How much time is that going to save you when you're doing the picture? You don't have to redraw these guys. You just have to remove them from another place. And in this place, they just removed this guy's head and put it here. And I'm pretty sure he did the same thing with all the other main characters. He just took them from someplace else and plopped them in here. And like I said, this happens over and over again. Here's another example. Same picture. Now, this is not something new. I mean, even back in the olden days, sometimes artists would take a panel, photocopy it, and maybe blow it up and put it someplace else. So it's not a new technique, but when you're working on a screen digitally, it makes it so much easier to do this kind of thing. It's a shortcut. This is not done for any artistic reason. It's not. It's just a shortcut that Zerker is using to save time because he does it so much, you know, and it makes you wonder what other kind of digital manipulations are going on. And this is not unusual. I mean, this is something, I mean, here we go again. This picture is that picture. I mean, he does it over and over. And it's just a modern comic book thing, which is why I really, really, really don't like modern comic books as much as I like the old school comic books. You know, if you're going to give me a comic book, draw the whole thing. I didn't get this. Actually, it was given to me, so I didn't get it at all. But, you know, I didn't buy it. But if I had bought it, I don't want to buy a comic book that's cut and pasted here and there. Draw the whole page. I mean, just draw the book. Is that too much to ask? It is. It's too much to ask, Roger. And like I said, Zerker is a great artist. I'm not saying he's not. And I'm not even saying that this is bad comic because, you know, the story is excellent. He gets the character right. He gets a lot of things right in here. But that thing that he does, that shortcut that he takes, it drives me crazy. And that is why I refuse to recommend this. I'm not recommending this. So there's my rant for the day. I did read also the Fantastic Four. I didn't read much of it because I'm too busy reading all this other stuff. And so I'm in the story Atlantis Rising at the moment. This is an issue of Fantastic Force, which is kind of forgotten nowadays. Although the artwork was pretty good in Fantastic Force. That was done by Dante Bastioni, who I don't know if he does American comic books anymore. But he's a pretty good artist. This is still going good. So I will probably read more of this hopefully today. I would have read it. I would have read more of that if I wasn't reading this. So I'm reading that. And I am going to start next this book. More pulp adventure, this time with a much more competent pulp hero, the most competent pulp hero you can get practically. This is Doc Savage, and this is Brand of the Werewolf. So I am reading every story of Doc Savage in the order that they were originally published in Doc Savage magazine. And this was the 11th story published in Doc Savage magazine, even though when it was reprinted by Bantam Books, they printed it as number 5. It's actually the 11th adventure of Doc Savage. Brand of the Werewolf. I've heard good things about this one. And I look forward to reading that. I'm going to start reading that later on today. I did get some good stuff in the mail. I got from my good friend Scott. My good friend Scott sent me this. He recently did a couple videos, and I think he's got another one on the way. He did a couple videos on this particular story, The Frost Giant's Daughter. I'm going to put his channel down below so you can check out those videos. They're fantastic. All of his videos are fantastic. And he had 2 of these. This Conan the Barbarian issue number 16, which has the Frost Giant's Daughter. So this is the first time Marvel actually reprinted the Frost Giant's Daughter, which was originally published in Savage Tales number 1 in black and white. This is the color version, the first color version, and it's wonderful. What a very kind gift. Thank you very much, Scott. That is great. So I got that in the mail, and I also got an Epic collection. I got Aliens, The Original Years, Volume 3. So this has the Aliens comics that were published by Dark Horse originally back in 1992 and 1993. It also includes the comic book adaptation, I believe, of Alien 3, not my favorite Alien movie. And it does a thing where it adapts the story, but all of the characters are unrecognizable because I guess they didn't have the right to do the likenesses of the characters. And so you have the characters, but they all look like other people. But this has a bunch of cool stuff in it. I really like the Aliens movie, the first two Aliens movies anyway. And I always liked the Aliens comics, so I got that. But the really cool thing I got was a DC Finest volume, and that's this one, Green Lantern, Earth's Other Green Lantern, which has the first appearance of Guy Gardner. So this is awesome. Silver Age Green Lantern stories. This has stuff from Gardner Fox, John Broome, and Gil Kane did all of the Silver Age Green Lantern comics. And this is a point where he's getting really good, and you start to see Gil Kane drawing like Gil Kane. I mean, he's really starting to cut loose at this period when he's drawing Green Lantern, and it's awesome. So these are great comics. And it doesn't just have Green Lantern issues. It has all of the Green Lantern stories from this time. So this is 1965 to 1968. So you also have Brave and the Bold, number 69, Detective Comics, number 350, and The Flash, number 168. This is a big volume, and it's fantastic. So I got this, and I'm very happy to get it. I think that's everything I have to say for today. I will catch you next time.